Good evening, readers. This is Akshita from Amazon India. Welcome to the Facebook Live series of Amazon Books India. Today we have with us Anshul Chaturvedi and Tisca Chopra. I welcome you both to this live session.
Thank you.
Before the conversation starts, I would like to introduce the speakers. Tisca Chopra is an Indian actress, author, and film producer. She has acted in over 45 feature films in different languages. Tare Zameen Par was India's official entry to the Academy Awards. Anshul Chaturvedi is a senior journalist at the Times of India with over 25 years of experience. He came across the works of Swami Vivekananda when he was 16, began writing about him in his 30s, and now, in his 40s, after a decade of thought and effort, he finally has a book in place. The Vivekananda Handbook for Every Living. It is available on Amazon India. And while we are at it, do not forget to check out Amazon Book Bazaar that goes live 10 to 14th of every month and pick your next book to read. To our viewers, I request you to keep posting your comments in the comment section and our speakers will take them by the end of the session. Handing over the conversation to our speakers now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, Anshul.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. So here we are with your second book. The first one, Work Sucks or Do You? First question that came to my mind was why Vivekananda and why today? Why this book on Vivekananda and why, more importantly, why today?
Why today sort of gives me more credit than I deserve because it's not as I structured it. If I had a choice, I would have had a book of 10 years back. It took me that long to structure something coherent, which you'd be able to last through and not toss it aside. Because when you talk about a religious person, the sort of reading I saw throughout was either scholarly or even more religious. So sometimes a book on a Swami Vivekananda is written by somebody else with the prefix Swami. So that's a different orbit. And so you have the CV to talk about it, right? Or it could be a tycoon, it could be a president or a prime minister saying, look, this man inspired me. He has a CV for it. But I didn't consume him as a religious icon, so to say. And the first piece I wrote on him was not thought out. So like I'm saying, literally, I first wrote on him when I was about 30. But I first read him when I was about 17 or 18. So it took me that long to get 500 words of coherent thought and say, no, I think I can write about him a little bit. And from that, from that 30 to like this horrendously old age I'm at right now, I began thinking about this and I had discussions with people almost about a decade back. And one thing I think is good that it got delayed all the while because in that decade my thinking also changed. So maybe 10 years back I would have written slightly more deferentially. That matlab, what a man was, just follow him. Over 10 years I sort of outgrow the need to blindly hero worship. So it's also more informed discussion. It's also more informed thought process that, this is what he's saying which is useful to you, relevant to you, seems very sharp. And now it sort of looks that it's come at a point where it's resonating well with people, I think, and somebody asked me the other day, that some of the feedback that I've got has been fairly good. And I'm not an author in this, I don't specialize, it's not my fifth book on spirituality or something like that. So why is it connecting? And I'd say that my only takeaway is that there are lots of questions and topics we don't like to talk about normally. In our need hierarchy, when all goes well, there are things we don't discuss. I mean, that classic, that the Buddha triggers when he and his charioteer go around, and the Buddha is not looking around saying, what a great palace my father has. He says that looks like a sick man. That looks like an old man. That looks like a dead man. Will I be all of these? Ideally, a prince should put that behind, right? Talk about it once, you rule for 20 years and then maybe your guru will come and give you some philosophical claptrap. But he's looked at that right away. Right now, all of us are in a less than ideal world. And right now, so we look at age and death and frailty and vulnerability slightly more upfront. as opposed to how much will my increment be this year, or what is my next car going to be. So I said maybe that's why the topics are sort of resonating little here. It's not that they were planned to come here, but it's sort of in that space that these things are gelling a little bit.
More than a little bit. It's an immensely readable book, and I've read it cover to cover. One of the sort of questions that I had, because I know you somewhat, is that what is it that you hope that the book will achieve? Because as somebody who's also written a book, a couple of books, I also have a certain idea as to who it will resonate with, and what I hope the book will do. So what do you hope the book will do? Even for one person, let's say.
So, two parts of this. One is that because I'm fortunate enough not to be an author by profession, it's not that I have a vested stake in who it should appeal to or where it should go. It's like in your industry, right? People make a film which is for a certain target audience. Diwali release, Eid release, whatever. There's certain feel-good family. And there are films you make for yourself. And mentally you're saying, this is the film I'm making for myself, or chalegi, nahi chalegi, either which way. But somebody might think of this movie when after I'm dead and talk about it. So the things you do, which are not necessarily aimed at a TG or a return. So I don't know where it resonates. What I've seen is that I've had discussions where somebody in their 50s say, I have read this and now my daughter is reading it. So that I'm a little surprised also, because mostly people don't read the same thing in that generation divide. So maybe it'll find so maybe it'll find its own space. But what would the book do for a reader is, how do I put it? So I'll explain to you. For example, if you look at this, maybe a 3-layer sandwich, something like that. I have random illustrations, so don't mind that. Last time I was talking about a jumble. So one layer of where I begin is, I read something the man says. So he says, I do not care for human help. And he starts over there. And then he says, those whole, you would have read it by now. He says random things which completely disrupt your established way of thinking. So that becomes my first layer, so to say, that, okay, this is something I'm reading about. Does it make sense? It's a random thought. Suna, dimag mein aaya, abhi kuch practical nahi hai. Later, I realized that in popular culture, then I began to find resonance in things which said what he said. So I was jotting, like from the teen times, like what clicked. So the other day on Twitter, somebody talked about Gurudar. So when you see Pyasa and you say, ye duniya agar mil bhi jaye to kya hai? So there's this light bulb thing. This is Vivekanand, right? मिल भी जाए तो क्या है, मतलब इतना क्या मरना की मिलेगी नहीं मिलेगी, क्या मिलेगा क्या नहीं मिलेगा. So then if you see Devanand's classics, मतलब बर्बादियों का जश्न मनाता चला गया. Again, it's my second layer coming in, that I am seeing, this is essentially what that guy said. This is slightly more lyrical and more interesting, but it resonates, it reinforces that thought process. Sajda came, Lata and the Jagjit Singh, when I was around school, college. And आदमी आदमी को क्या देगा, जो भी देगा वही खुदा देगा. I do not care for human help. So that was layer 2. That, okay, this is resonating with me and this is popular culture. But this is what that spiritual man said. And now these two things seem to be falling into a bit of a alignment. Then the mind is absorbing them from both sides. Thirdly, when you begin to live your life and you actually do these things once in a while, and you say, okay, it actually worked. So that's how it went for me. So my point here is that for some readers, I may be able to fast forward step 1 and 2. Saying this is how this man thinks and this is how somebody else has gone through this. Take a live demo. And it's not just my life, right? I'm going from Ayakaka to Subhash Bose. So, broadly, this is how it unfolded. So maybe somebody can sort of fast forward a little bit and then add their life experiences to it and see if this 3 go into, a gel state. Perhaps that's the only takeaway. As an author, I can say anything else will be narcissistic to say, "Arey, मेरी किताब है आपकी लाइफ बदल देगी." बदले तो फिर आपको बोलना चाहिए, मुझे नहीं बोलना चाहिए.
No, that is I particularly resonated. Many things resonated very strongly with me in the book, and I spoke to you when I did yesterday. I think we were chatting. Um, One of the things, and I'm quoting here from the book, where on the chapter on individualism, it says, Swamiji says, "I have a mission to fulfill. I will work it out alone. I do not care who comes, who goes." Um, I've long believed that, but I've also sort of understood I'm moving towards directing a feature film, and I'm sort of understanding the merit of being a team player. While you have your mission to work out in life, and you do have things that you got to figure out for yourself, it is essentially a solo ticket in this life. You don't come with anyone co-joined, not even twins. And in that sense, your individual karma and your individual path has to be your own. But there is great emphasis today. A lot of friends who work in the corporate sector keep talking about team player. He's a team player. He's a team player. So got to, all of that. So how does this fit in with the work it out alone and I will do my own mission? It's up to me and I will do it. Um, do the two clash, or is it that I'm not seeing?
It's not happened yet, at least not drastically enough to cause me great grief. But is there really a contradiction, Tiska? Because every creator in cinema,
That's my question. That's my question to you. That I'm not seeing it. So I felt like that often enough that you have to have a vision. Say, for example, if I'm directing a feature or writing a book, it has to be one person's vision. But you have to be open enough to take feedback and be a team player and encourage other people to bring out their best, etc. So I'm just trying to understand that is that a contradiction, or is that something that is essentially the same thing? That's my question.
I think it doesn't disrupt teamwork in any way. Probably it sort of helps it a little bit because if you learn to, I mean, it's a very tall order. I'm not saying I'm there yet, but if you learn to think somewhere like him, I think you're slightly less fragile ego. And you're slightly less in that race to, how do I say, elbow people out so that you can be number one in some queue. So when you're not in the rat race, your degree of intensity of competition and hostility is lower.
Hmm.
Anybody who's slightly calmer as opposed to being slightly hyper will handle disagreement and differences slightly better, don't you think so? So once you're centered, you are not panicking. You're not reacting with anger or hostility at a colleague who's disagreeing with you. So I think that if you don't seek validation, it is you're a better co-worker. Because if you always seek validation, you get upset if the meeting room doesn't agree with you. But I'm okay if you don't agree with me. I'll go back and rethink. Because I'm not deriving my entire life's validation from four people saying, "Today, boss, you are a rock star." Maybe you think I'm average. So be it. We'll come back. So you're less edgy, less hyper, less combative, which on the whole, I mean, only a superstar in Bollywood manages that, right? That star who comes late and does what he wants to do. Most of us need to be team players. So for the average
No,
Joe,
even the superstars are essentially team players. They may not have been at some point when they were climbing up the ladder, but the more closely I work with them, uh, I find that ego only hinders progress. It will not in any way elevate you, because it's an impediment essentially. It's a mental block, to put it quite simply.
see,
So no,
ego and
not even.
confidence are not synonyms. Na? They're almost divergent takes. The less confident
Yeah,
you are, the more you need validation for your ego to be sorted.
correct. Then there is one of my favorite quotes from the book, and I think you've quoted it twice in 2 pages, which is, "This I have seen in life. He who is overcautious about himself falls into dangers at every step. He who is afraid of losing honor and respect gets only disgrace. He who is afraid of loss always loses." Well, how to be unafraid of loss? That's that's a question. I mean, of disgrace. Those are the things. Doesn't everybody want to be loved and liked and respected and um, even admired, desired? So I'm saying in that whole plethora of adjectives, how does one you know, you're in the business of you must be getting calls morning, night, and afternoon from PR people saying, "यार image के लिए बहुत important है, ये image के लिए ये वाला word जरूर use करना." Though, how do you manage that? And how do you sort of process the now I'm asking a personal question as well as a question about the book. So, you know, you deal with some of the most famous people in the country and sometimes in the world. Um, at your day job, which is you can't leave your woke Vivekananda touched self out of it, can you? Because having had an idea or having got an idea, you cannot unget it. You can't say that this no longer exists in my uh, headspace. So, in that sense, my question is that, particularly with this statement, when it is all about creating an image and creating advertising around that and building the brand, whether your own or someone else's, your own meaning not your Anshuls, but the brand that you work with, how do you navigate and keep this reality as opposed to the reality that a greater, higher reality, a higher intelligence, if you may? Does that make sense, the question?
It does. I know what you're saying.
Mm.
And I'll come from a very different perspective here. So Vivekanand once wrote that Ramakrishna said that to kill yourself, you need only a pin. To kill somebody else, you need a sword. So he said to apply things to yourself, it is far easier. To go and teach and do all that, you need to be on a different space. Now, I am not mandated to convey my perspective on life to anybody else, am I? Short of those who read this or have a discussion, I don't have to bring forward my take to somebody else and say, listen, maybe you should think differently.
No, I
Sometimes
was
people
I
ask,
was wasn't going for that, Anshul. Sorry if I didn't communicate. My bad. I took a lot of words also to sort of ask a question. Let me rephrase that then. Let me put it this way that uh, to work in a job that is about constructing images, uh, and grace and position and power and build up those kind of things, whether it is for individual brands or corporate brands, that's what part of your work would be, I imagine. And then to have this philosophy where you know that none of this is, it's quite irrelevant, it's ephemeral, and not just is it ephemeral, it's quite undesired. So how do you marry the two? That's my question.
I function effectively as a teetotaler serving as a bartender.
Okay, well said. Well said. The answer was far more succinct and brevity being the essence of wit. Okay, pretty early on in the book, you talk about death, and I think that's quite deliberate because Vivekananda lived his life keeping death sharply as his focus. Um, you know, he sees that it is the world is a place to perfect oneself and not a perfect place by itself. How do you apply this to work and family?
So, see, I've handled death at 2 points and two different dimensions. Obviously, that's how most of us think, right? One is we think about our own death, and then we think of the death of people who matter to us. Our own death, we are sometimes very flamboyant. कि यार आएगी तो देख लेंगे, बोलने में क्या जाता है? But that doesn't necessarily mean that the moment when it comes, we will be sorted and be able to handle it. I mean, when Irfan heard about this thing, he wrote a small note. We used to have chats for a long time. And he wrote that very interesting note from London when he was undergoing treatment. And he said, कि मैं train में बैठा था, and the TT comes and taps me on the shoulder, says, your station has come. He says, but I was not prepared to get down right now. That's the mental reaction I had, that अभी तो मेरी जिंदगी मेरे दिमाग में तो अभी चल रही है, मुझे बहुत कुछ करना है. So when we have those questions coming to us, none of us knows how we will take it. From a distance, from being a schoolboy, I can say, अरे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, जब मरना है मर जाएंगे. So if you talk about popular culture, among the earliest films I remember seeing, Big B, मुकद्दर का सिकंदर, हेल्प, ऑफ कोर्स बगैर हेलमेट के बाइक चलाते थे उस जमाने में सब लोग, बट ऑन दैट मोटरसाइकिल कि क्या जिंदगी तो बेवफा है, एक दिन ठुकराएगी, मौत महबूबा है, साथ लेकर जाएगी. You can romanticize it, make it very interesting, but ये मौत महबूबा है, साथ लेकर जाएगी, once you're 55, 60, 70, I don't think you really long for that महबूबा interaction, right? You don't know how it is. Time is running out. And how you go. You hear such stories of people, whose last moments have been so difficult. And one of the things which struck me was, because when I was in school, I went to see Superman. And Christopher Reeve was Superman that stage. And I didn't even know about Hollywood stars, but it was just Superman, right? You say, I also want a t-shirt like this and whatever. You'll go to school, my birthday wearing it, things like that. As I grow up, I read in the papers, Christopher Reeve fell off a horse. And his spine was damaged. And then he's in a wheelchair. And that's it. He's on a wheelchair till the day he dies. And he doesn't die very comfortably or elegantly. Or so far back as a few years back, when we didn't know whether Schumacher would live or not live. And you said it's this much. 2 months back in Delhi, I mean, people didn't know, that buffering that we have, that we are well equipped, we are, I don't know, upper middle class, whatever you may call it, that, सुलझ जाएगा. सुलझने का कोई guarantee नहीं था. And I read a lot about wars, so I have read so much about, people having to handle your imminent demise or somebody else's. And one takeaway for me is that if you don't think about it in advance, you have to handle both emotional stress and intellectual questioning. So when we lose someone, or when somebody says, maybe you have only 2 years left, we start to saying, God, why me? Ditto for somebody else around us going, could I have done this differently? So I just thought that the way he approached his own death, that was so, it's completely one of a kind. I haven't read anything like that before or after. So the mastery of life and death we say, but mastery of life we equate with saying my CTC has gone up, my salary is big, my bank balance is good, I got a good house. Mastery of death, we have no idea. So do we even think about it? And if we think about it sitting in our homes, we are told, "Arey yaar, ashubh baat mat karo." But this is the one topic you have to be prepared for. There is no choice. Everything else you can dodge. You cannot dodge this. Yet when people lose somebody close for 6 months, 1 year, and people close, I mean, I've seen so many in the last 2 years, it's not a good thing to know about, but you're handling both the emotional void of losing somebody and the intellectual question, what happened? And then somebody comes to fill in that space. Somebody will read you one scripture or 2 scriptures, you'll go on Instagram and see 4 posts about grief. But that's all band-aids. It may take us 2 years to reconcile to a loss. It took me, God, how many months to reconcile to a pet's loss? So I want the perspective, like tomorrow I shouldn't be awkward discussing death with my next generation. Obvious है ना, होगा ना. So I say मेरी photo अच्छी लगाना drawing room में, at least. So that mindset has to be there. It is inevitable. Hopefully we go there without facing it very complicatedly, very badly. So the other day I was remembering, in the NCC camp, सुबह चलाते थे कुछ पुराने classical songs या भजन types. The CEO must have had a fancy, but so when you hear this दो आंखें 12 हाथ वाला, ए मालिक तेरे बंदे हम, उसमें that small emphasis on नेकी पर चले और बदी से टले ताकि हंसते हुए निकले दम. So the writer made the point that that's a privilege. If you can हंसते हुए अगर आप जा सकते हो, तो ये ऐसे नहीं होता, शायद कमाना पड़ता है. So that's one part of seeing how I go, and the other part is seeing how others do.
Stemming from that, from the last line that you said, "Taki haste hue nikle dam," as I understood from the book, I'm not enormously familiar with Vivekananda. My introduction, I would say, to him is other than quotes made in school debates and colleges, school and college debates. This the introduction to his ideas is via this book. So what I understand is that he has a very strong faith in the afterlife. तो हंसते हुए एकदम निकल सकता है क्योंकि आपको पता है कि ये कॉमा है, फुल स्टॉप नहीं है. Firstly, am I right in that assumption that he has a strong faith in afterlife?
He's taken for granted throughout. It's
That
not
is
even
the
a topic
part
that
I'm
is
questioning.
discussed.
That's the part that I'm questioning actually. So this is the real question. Sorry, I have these like unformatted questions which are sort of like sometimes are 70 lines and have a one word brief answer, 2 words. So the question is this then, that because you explained that he has this firm conviction in an afterlife. My question is this, that when something has no empirical evidence, just on the basis of what one person is saying, uh, how can we assume that to be the truth? And then isn't it kind of Shakespearean that all this women fury for nothing, sort of, in a sense. So I'm trying to marry those contradictions in my head. It's comforting to know that there is an afterlife, because then there is a continuation, and that gives my the deepest layer of my soul some comfort that अच्छा ठीक है, अभी जो भी यहाँ पे पुण्य कमाया है, या जो भी movement of soul hua hai, an upgrade of thought process, increase of vibration, suspension of materialism, or whatever else the journey of my soul has been through this earth school, then there is some payoff. What if one were to be nihilistic and say that this is it, this is what it is, take what you can, enjoy what you can, it's all here and now. Um, so I'm asking, how do you accept that belief of Vivekananda?
So I'll keep this brief and keep it in 2 parts, because the topic as such is so massive, and I'm not the highest qualified authority in the planet to have this discussion, and the topic is very, very big, right? So the entire discussion could go here. So I'll give it in 2 perspectives. One, that Vivekananda did not convince me that this truth existed. He is maybe the 6th or the 7th person in the structure, because it's not that I was reading only him. And so to my mind, that discussion, so again, the Gita has many variations and many commentators. I picked up Radhakrishnan's sort of commentary on the Gita pretty early. And to my mind, that is the most lucid and logical discussion on the topic I have ever read from then till now. So one is the intellectual part. The other is anecdotal. So, for example, on Aurobindo in his own writings and Vivekananda's own writings, at very, very different points, we say things like, that if at any given point, for no reason, for no rational reason, born by behavior, expectation, you have a very high tendency of affection or animosity towards somebody at first sight, with no rational background, no, you haven't learned it. You just meet something or somebody, you look at a place and you resonate with it.
You like, you don't like, you have deja vu, you have
Yes.
yeah,
So
okay.
both of them made the point recurrently that when that happens, it is because of your previous impressions, that things stay with you, and when you again cross those entities or those places or those people, something within you connects, which is why you have an inexplicable, non-rational extreme of emotion, liking or disliking. Now, this is a takeaway in the middle of something else. He's not having whole section on this, but I'm saying from very divergent minds, very divergent places, there was enough coming my way. And I'm not even going to the Buddha space, because the Buddha is the first person who asked the most rational questions. Those 4 questions are very basic, which need to be asked. Will I be here? Will I be on this sick bed? Will I be on this deathbed? And he went to find his answers. And his answers, then when you read about him later, he says, look, I came to this stage last. So you hear about the Bodhisattva, that, the Buddha was born in different versions, and he came here. So very different people, very different, appeals, emotional, sentimental, intellectual, anecdotal. So when he came in, there wasn't this great contradiction in my mind that this thing I need to understand whether it holds true or not. And this is to each his own. Honestly, there is no way that I or you or anybody else can have a preset. How much do we believe in this? Nobody comes back to tell the story.
Because nobody has proof either way,
Yes.
frankly. No one's come back from the other side to tell us the tale. So
So the
we
beauty of
can,
this point, Tisca, is that therefore nobody is qualified to tell us any better than what we know, no matter what their stature be in religion.
correct, correct. Point taken. Um, I have a personal vested interest question here. As an artist, and I'm sure everybody in their own way wants to, um, as Swamiji says, make all work truly great. That make every piece of work that you do. Don't look for great work to do. Make the work that you're doing great. How do you do that?
So this is a recurrent discussion I've had with young colleagues, especially in our line or maybe your line. People come with a lot of creative vision, and without dissing that in any which way, that what you want to do as an artist or as a writer or as a journalist or whatever your chosen calling may be. I'm saying that don't attribute greatness to a nature of work. And I have two layers for it. One layer is that any work which when you at the outset go there and say this is fascinating, work also has a honeymoon period. It is not for 30 years you will look at the same salon or the same boutique or the same whatever and say, oh my God, this is the love of my life. Once you do accounting, billing, salary, structures, there is a subsiding to it. I don't write something grand every morning. Mostly I'm approving leaves. So there is a certain point of if you expect too much flamboyance from your workplace or your given area of work, you will have a certain degree of falling out from it at some stage. Then the divorce will also happen. But that's a footnote. It may or may not happen. If somebody can do the same thing for ages and be very happy in this space, it's great. But the other thing I have a slight problem, and it's slightly social in texture, that when we are growing up, the question we ask ourselves or we ask a child, "Tum kya banoge?" Our mindset makes it a CV question. तुम टीचर बनोगे, तुम IAS बनोगे, तुम डॉक्टर बनोगे, इंजीनियर बनोगे. So from that stage, we make kids obsessed about their profession. And from age to 22, the child is saying, मुझे ये नौकरी करनी, basically ये मेरा career line है. And then if you don't get that, you get something else, suddenly your life is shattered. I didn't make it to IAS, I didn't make it to the IIT. अब मैं average इंसान हूँ, because मैं उस exam में पीछे आ गया. So you are equating people कि मैं क्या बनना चाहता हूँ. It's not कि मैं क्या बनना चाहता हूँ. मेरा visiting card क्या बोलेगा, that is my life. Which is a very odd way to position things, because your growth may or may not come through your career alone. And you can rise many ranks in your career and yet not be somebody very coherent or sorted. The Peter Principle explains very frequently that people who rise up then can't rise further than they stop there. So I just think that mind space ki, okay, if I wear a white coat and I'm a doctor, ergo I am therefore compassionate. If I wear any uniform, I am therefore very courageous. If I sit in a newspaper office or a writer's room, I am therefore very intellectual. ये जो हमने equate करके रखते हैं ना कि human traits come from jobs and professions, this is not rational thinking. And therefore we diminish anything else which is not in that elite space. But the smallest of jobs need to be respected, because a person might be growing individually doing that small, school teacher's job in a village more than a professor at a New York university. Why do we equate personal growth with visiting cards? And therefore, the more you do that, the more flamboyant your visiting card. You say, oh, this work is drudgery, that work is routine, this work is petty, this work is... civil services if you're not getting your SPDM of a coveted place, you are given some corner posting, officers don't like to go there, right? Sidelined. So they don't do that work well. Why would you do work badly to come back to prominence? That's what we do, most of us. We're sidelined, we stop engaging in our work. Why not make that sidelined work big? So I don't agree with all her styles, but it's a very small point. Once upon a time, Kiran Bedi was supposed to be Delhi Police Commissioner. Supposedly. हो सकता है बन जाएंगी, नहीं बन जाएंगी. Somebody else got that role. She was apparently not happy about it. She was given Tihar jail. She got a maxis out of it. So either you can say yes, shunt kar diya mujhe, or you can say I'll do this well. So nature of job is not in your or my hand. See, you can sign a movie and that guy says no tomorrow. I don't want you in that movie. Acting is in your hands. Your art is in your hands. Which movie you do is not in your hands alone. What job I do is not in my hands alone. So how can we equate that? It's not how we work is our choice. Where we work is not always our choice. So I say focus on how you work, and if you work well, at some point decent work will come your way, and if not, who cares?
I've long believed this very strongly, but more on that when we chat personally. Um, in a world that worships success, because success provides opportunities, Vivekananda sees failure as an opportunity. And I find that very interesting. That's fascinating because he says it has a huge role in building your character. We know that failure can build character. It can also destroy you completely if you let it. What is the difference between the two approaches? How can you uh, make failure an opportunity, and how can success be the opposite of an opportunity, and how do you max a failure?
So first of all, there is a delusion that successful people have not failed. They are currently successful. Be it in commerce, be it in politics, be it in sports. Success means currently you are on the upswing. There is no dearth of people in cinema, I mean, or in sports, debutants who did brilliantly and then suddenly their batting stopped.
There is a term
So,
for it in our industry, one hit wonder.
One hit wonder. So therefore, that his first hit he was successful, right? But that sticker comes off very quickly. In cinema, how long does it take? 2 years of nothing visibility and people begin to question whether you should retire. So I won't take any names, but you know full well successful people all over page 3, all over everything one place, and 2 years later, like then you say, then that thing happens, अरे image perception कुछ करना चाहिए, क्योंकि otherwise कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. So the word is very ephemeral, it's very transitional, and to give it gravitas, I think is fooling ourselves, and especially the person getting it, if he's saying to himself, I have become successful, then that's self-lying of a very high order. So I'm currently well placed. That's it. And that is about it mostly. Also that the people who adulate you or clap for you are the first ones to abuse you and throw sticks at your house also if it's required. I mean, cricketers know that all the time, right? सीरीज जीते सीरीज हारे से डिपेंड करता है कि तुम आज सक्सेसफुल कितने हो, फूल मिल रहा है गाली मिल रहा है. सो लेट्स नॉट ट्रीट इट लाइक सम डेफिनेट स्टेटमेंट कि जैसे मेरी हाइट इतने इंच हो गई तो हो गई, अब वही रहेगी. ऐसा तो होता नहीं कामयाबी में. सो दैट्स पार्ट वन. And the ones who think like that, they can't handle the lower shifts very easily because they will happen. The other part is that from mythology to war, and since so much of our storytelling is folklore and mythology and so on and so forth, what I wrote in the book as well, that where again that second layer of things resonating with what he was saying is that if you look at the two great epics. So, and I sat down and did this, like mind space wise, and I wrote a piece on this many years back, that don't be scared of exile. Look what it did to Ram. So I said, imagine a successful CV, so to say. Father says, become king. Son becomes king. Rules. Now, people rule, dynasties go on ruling. But because he could not rule, there's this lack of success there, that phase of things not being okay with you. Everything you read about that character comes from the phase when he was not in power, not in control. Once he comes back, the story is not as interesting anymore, is it? Equally, for everything about the Gita and the Mahabharata, I have struggled to understand कि जब finally जीत गए पांडव तो उन्हें क्या किया उसके बाद? उनके अनुशासन का मैंने कुछ नहीं पढ़ा आज तक. What was this path-breaking rule they brought for which they fought so much? Everything I read about him is about fighting for it, about the phase where, okay, this happened and Shakuni did that and you had to escape, whatever, Agyatwas mein jana pada, etc., etc. And then you come back and it's over and you regain success, which then has very little to build you further. Next thing I read is Yudhishthir पैदल जा रहे हैं, looking to go to heaven, and all his brothers are falling by the wayside. कि अरे इसमें ये कमी थी, ये कमी थी, ये कमी थी. So to that degree, the character defining phase is the phase when you are not holding power, when you are not successful. And if you use that phase, that defines you. Which maybe had you not struggled to get it and you were simply given that, had the trust agreed to give it to them, you would not have seen the grandiose of all this discussion. Arjun को सवाल ही नहीं पूछता, तो गीता कहाँ से लिखी जाती? So the bad phases, I think, are far sharper in shaping us. If we realize that they are transitional, you don't realize very early. In my 20s, I didn't realize that failure was temporary. It hit me very, very, very hard. But I think that's also what forced me to think and read a little more. Maybe if I had cracked something very early at 21 and got a huge paycheck, I wouldn't have needed to think about any of it. So despair is a great motivator to analyze. And so I think the earlier it comes, the quicker you can take it. So if I have to get failure in life, I think it should come earlier than later.
Yeah. My first film flopped, as you know. So yeah, came rather too early, but all the happier for it now after hearing you say what you said. Okay, so here's we're reaching the end of our discussion because I believe we have to take questions from the audience. But I have two things to ask, and I'm going to ask them together so you can then. You say in the book that if you cannot take the unpopular calls, leadership roles aren't your thing at work. The whole Mr. Hudson thing that Vivekananda came up with, that it doesn't matter to me what the other person is saying. Is that realistic? And the second question, okay, then I'll ask the question. So your time starts now.
It's realistic to the degree that, again, see, I'm not a Premji or Ambani, so I can't answer you definitively. But then neither of most people watching this, Ambani doesn't need to watch anything to take a takeaway, right? So those of us who live the day-to-day existential battles, who are interested in EMIs and so on and so forth, the normal life, I think you can also manage to go through without hard calls, but it is ineffective leadership. Because there is a price to be paid for those calls. It's
for
not that
those calls. For not making those calls.
The hard call has a price you pay. In personal unpopularity at a given point of time. Fair enough. Not taking that call is being Dhritarashtra. How does that make you a great king? So it cuts both ways. You'd rather be remembered as being effective, even if slightly hard, than being ineffective and popular. Then you should do other things, but not step into roles which require to take decisions. It's not about being antagonistic or being hostile or anything. But वो लिहाज जो word है ना, it's a very risky word in professional dealings. You have to let go of lihaz when taking business calls, work calls.
And my final question is a bit of a curveball. Do you think Swami Vivekananda would have been happy with this book?
Such a tough one. So obviously, I assume that he would write a acidic note saying, for all the time you spent in not good enough. But the point is that in these 30 years of absorbing that, I would be okay with it and not let it destroy me. Saying, fine, that's your take. So in one of his writings, he made the point that, I think he had this whole pitch about what the orthodoxy wanted him to say. And sometimes he wouldn't stick to any orthodoxy. And so he said, and that's the line in the book, that, I will not Hinduize my message or Christianize it. I will only myize it, and that is all. So if Vivekananda were to review the book, I would say, I have my eyes it. You have written enough, no? So if you want to read your work, they'll read yourself. Why do you want to compete with me? I'm giving a footnote.
Very, very well put. Yeah, I can imagine him saying something like that. Mm.
I would expect him to, but I'm saying as a proper Shagird, you should be able to box with your coach, no?
Yeah.
Maybe outscore him occasionally, even if accidentally.
Indeed, indeed.
We
So
have
we
some
at
questions popping up. I think.
yeah. Mm.
Hi. Thank you, Tisca and Anshul, for the great session and for sharing your experiences and thoughts with us. S- So let's just take a couple of questions. I think we don't have a lot of time. So let's
I
just start with,
think there's this question about one takeaway. Would you read that out?
yeah, if there is one takeaway you'd want the readers to take from this book, what would you think it should be?
So the one takeaway I think you should have is to not worship Vivekanand, to not be fascinated by what he said, but to acquire from him the reflex of questioning everything that is told to you. I mean, he is not a fanboy of anybody, and we should not be fanboys of his philosophy. So, if you stop looking for answers given by A, B, C, and D, and you question everything, make your own notes, do your counter reading. If you can be aggressive, question, find your answers, and not look to any single source of inspiration to be your blind guide. That I think is what you should take away.
Um, there is another question, which is what is the one self help book that you will recommend for motivation or inspiration?
Well, on this platform, I should say mine, but honestly, there is no one great because see your needs are different. It's like saying which diet is the perfect one to go to. Now that answer is a lie because there is no one perfect diet. Depends on how you are physically placed. So, like I was saying earlier with Tisca, that if it's a topic of death, Aurobindo has something to tell me, Vivekananda has something to tell me, but Radhakrishnan gives me the most lucid discussion. So when I add them, that topic works for me. On the other hand, when I'm thinking about office and other things, there I don't go to Aurobindo. There Vivekanand fits in my space. So it's like saying, which is the one icon you look at. And I had this chat with a couple of people a few days back. I said, it's like if Raju Hirani is making a film on Gandhi and he says non-violence is a great thing. At that time, he's not saying Gandhi is the icon for everything. If you want to learn parenting, maybe Gandhi is not the right person to go to. For example, going by what his kids later on said. So there is no need to fix this role on somebody, that greatness. You counter question, you read multiple things. Maybe start with this. Maybe go back and read more about Vivekananda and then see what he's saying about other people. You have to question and not take anybody's ज्ञान as the final word कि देखो ये पढ़ो इससे तुम्हें सब कुछ मिल जाएगा, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है.
There's just one last question that we'll take. It is, can you please give a few book recommendations for young readers?
How
So
young?
good question. Yeah, are we old?
No, not
Depends.
definitely. Maybe beginning budding readers.
So I think typically what happens, like the other day, Tisca, a couple of days back in a discussion, somebody was saying, should this be in this curriculum? Should you bring Vivekananda into the school books, for example? Isn't that the right thing to do? And I said, if he was in the curriculum, I would maybe never have read him after I finished the class. But that's the one surest way to make sure you don't read things, by making it part of formal teaching. So now, when you bring a book to a young reader in which you are trying to bring him some rationality of, say, faith, spirituality, religion. Now they're not the same words actually. Today they mean very different things. But assuming that you're saying, read beyond something, kuch aur bhi samjho. I think what elders should avoid is, how do I say, forcing it down somebody's throat. And secondly, to bring the simplest format. For example, Ramakrishna, right? You have a huge book, the Gospel of Ramakrishna. The book is this size, and I struggle to sometimes. It intimidates me because his life is so evolved that you feel extremely inferior. यार हम लोग क्या जिंदगी जी रहे, किस लिए जी रहे? But if you take something far smaller, for example, something as small as this, it's not intimidating. It's not the whole answer. But if you give a child a simplified version, a smaller version, a less intimidating version, even Amarjit Katha for something, you bring the curiosity to read more. The moment we say, oh, this is huge gyan, here it is, the child says, never in my life am I going to read this. So it develops a distaste for that genre altogether. Like when I was a teenager, and I've written the book also, being seen with a book on Vivekananda is the ultimate death of your cool quotient. मतलब ये धार्मिक किताब पढ़ता है लड़का, मतलब what the hell. So people don't want to be seen with religious books when they are young and cool. So it makes sense to not intimidate them further, but find simplest narratives which give them a link to start off. So whether it is teachings of Ramakrishna, or simply the equally small books about Vivekanand, or with all objectivity the book I have written, which is a simpler model. It will not scare somebody into saying, "Yes, a बहुत theoretical मुश्किल है." That sort of reading I think we should start off with and take it from there.
And might I add that you can also add my book to the list, which is called What's Up With Me. And that's a book for young preteens, which is guiding them through puberty and helping them to become strong scientific creatures, not shrouded in mysticism and taboo. Plug over.
There's just one
Nicely
last
done.
question.
Well timed.
There's just one last question. Do you have a favorite Swami Vivekananda quote? Any favorite Swami Vivekananda quote?
I know what that is, but please go ahead.
But she's already spelled it out. It's, I don't know. It is the same one which this guy referred to. This one, this I've seen in life. This page is very old. It's been here for ages. I'm sorry, holding this side. So
I think
that rationality, because this, and so I'll come from where, I was a extremely defensive child. I did not want to engage with people. I didn't want to be put through questions and pressures. And of course, see, Tisca, in that stage, you were not on social media. No, you didn't have the incremental worry कि यार दुनिया में कौन किसको picture को trash कर रहा है, अखबार को trash कर रहा है, किताब को trash कर रहा है. This all wasn't there. Actually, they had simpler lives. But I realized that reflex of not doing what scares you allows other people to build your walls very early in life. And so the loudest, shrillest person in your existence decides how your life will go. Now that's a sad orbit, right? Here lies the man whose life would decide by everyone who didn't like him. I mean, it's really not much of a achievement overall. So I need a conscious thought about countering fear. Why should I counter fear? Because countering fear for the heck of it means what? How do you do that? War is easier because you're going in the collective. You say we will charge even if we die, but then you have so many flags behind you. Desh ke liye marunga, platoon ke liye marunga. Individually kiske liye maroge aap? Why will you take panga for nothing? So to counter that fear, the point he made, and see the bulk of what he wrote, which I use as my quotes, is what he wrote in letters. Because when he was speaking to public crowd, his writing was filtered. It's appealing to everybody. Then you bring it down to the LCM, so to say. But when he's writing a letter, it's one-to-one. And there he comes out and says the things he doesn't say otherwise in public gatherings. So when he writes this I have seen in life. So he's not postulating कि ऐसा हो सकता है. It's not डर के आगे जीत है, मैंने बोल दिया. It's beyond that. So when he starts with these three things, he who is overcautious about himself falls into dangers at every step. So he's telling me, by being overcautious, you'll fall into danger. And where have I practically lived this? I'm not even going to the micros of official work and all of that. I'm saying when you are driving on the highway at 160 and a truck comes on the wrong side, if your driving skill is good enough, you might still get past. But if you panic, you are dead. So often on the road, people panic, and that is what causes the crash, because your mind says, damn it, what's happening? Those 2 seconds of deciding things, we get it wrong. We freeze. And I have gone through that more often than I would want to. So there I get it. If you're overcautious, you might fall into more danger. As opposed to being reckless and saying, I'll get off the road and I'll get on the, I'll just get out of the situation. Ab kya hoga, wo sochne ka time nahi. So the first part was, he was overcautious about himself, falls into dangers at every step. Second, he was afraid of losing honor and respect, gets only disgrace. Now, as Tisca said, honor, all of that, these are, things which you hold very dear. At one point in the book, I have been slightly dismissive and said, what is honor but the opinion of others? And in reverse, I'm sure, Tisca, you've seen those lines. I forget the exact words, but that whole Roman sort of saying that the crowd will applaud your beheading as much as they applaud your, enthroning. The crowd wants a spectacle. So must not take their clapping very seriously when you are being crowned, because when you are being guillotined, they'll also clap sometimes. Many kings have been through that cycle. So let's not take the applause very, very seriously. Jab aati hai. Third point was that the concept of seeking honor and respect means you always have to change your reaction to say, will people like this? And if it's commercially driven, chalo theek hai. If you have to launch a picture, you have to launch a book, you have to say, okay, will people like this? Else, why bring it out? But we take it to every sphere of our life. And it usually makes you a slightly confused person, a slightly indecisive person. A person who does not have any clear track of philosophy and who goes by the current wave. कि फिलहाल कॉमेडी चल रही है तो मैं कॉमेडी एक्टर हूँ, अगले साल मतलब साइंस फिक्शन चल रहा है तो मैं वो बन जाता हूँ, अब पेट्रियोटिक फिल्म है तो झंडा की पिक्चर बनाता हूँ. That's not really a school of thought as a filmmaker. So if you have a school of thought, I think you should stick to it rather than go with this 6 months phase suggest something happened. So that way I'm saying it diminishes you the individual and your clarity of thought. And so when he comes back to the last line, he sums it up. He who's always afraid of loss, always loses. So he planted fear as the starting point of failure. So you begin to think differently. When you're afraid, you say, oh, this man says, if you're afraid, तब तो guaranteed failure है ना, तो करके देख लो, तब शायद fail हो गए, ये करने से पक्का fail हो. Because always loses is not going in ambiguous terms. So he forced me to do things which I was afraid to do, saying by going in this model तो तुम वैसे ही खत्म हो, दूसरा ट्राई कर लो, क्या नुकसान है, दूसरा ट्राई किया थोड़ा बहुत. That's how it goes.
Thank you, Anshul, for the explanation. I guess we have reached the end of the live and the questions. And thank you everyone for tuning in. You can check out Anshul's The Vivekananda Handbook for Everyday Living on Amazon India's website and app. Thank you, Tisca. Thank you, Anshul.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.